Good morning. Being 9 a.m., I'll call to order the McHenry County Board Committee of the Whole meeting of October 12th, 2023, and Mr. Kunkel will lead us in the pledge today.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kathy, could you call the roll, please?
Carolyn Campbell. Joseph Gottemaler. Terry Greeno. Here. Eric Hendricks. Carl Kaminsky.
Present.
James Kearns. Here. Matthew Kunkel. Here. Teresa Meshes. Here. Lou Ness. Here. John Reinhardt.
Here.
Brian Sager.
Here.
Michael Shorten.
Here.
Michael Scala.
Present.
Larry Smith.
Here.
Gloria Van Hoff.
Present.
Tracy Von Bergen. Here. Kelly Wegner. Here. Chairman Bueller.
Here. Having a quorum, we'll proceed. Good morning. I have a number of items to share with the board before we begin reviewing the agenda for next Tuesday's meeting. October is Illinois Manufacturing Month, and McHenry had the honor of getting a visit Tuesday from the Makers on the Move bus tour, which is put on by the Illinois Manufacturing Association and the Illinois Manufacturing Excellence Center. We stopped for a news conference across the street at the Michael J. Sullivan Judicial Center before moving on to a tour of the AFC Materials Group in Lake in the Hills and a celebration at Sohopt Brewery in Huntley. I had the honor of saying a few words at the news conference, during which I touted our Advanced McHenry County initiative and the manufacturing and training programs it has kickstarted. I'm happy to report that the second annual Amnesty Week held by Circuit Clerk Kathy Keefe's office from September 25th to September 29th was a big success that saw almost double the participants from last year. 94 people who had past due court fines and fees took advantage of Amnesty Week and paid them off in full without the accumulated interest and penalties. As a result, the 22nd Judicial Circuit collected almost $26,000 in outstanding balances, and the 94 participants saved a total of almost $20,000 in interest and fees. The Circuit Clerk also partnered with Prairie State Legal Services and the McHenry County Bar Association to host a one-day expungement clinic at the end of Amnesty Week to help people who have turned their lives around file petitions to get their criminal records expunged or sealed free of charge. 12 people attended the clinic, and 25 more who were not registered came as well, and their information was taken to see if they can be helped at a later date. Congratulations to Kathy Keefe and her staff, as well as to the volunteering attorneys for a job well done. On Wednesday, October 4th, I attended a meeting with Chief Judge Michael Camille, along with our judicial partners and many leaders from local law enforcement, to gauge the initial impact and implementation of the Pretrial Fairness Act, 2 weeks after it went into effect. Our forward-thinking judges and law enforcement officers put measures into place long before the act went into effect to ensure that we were complying with these new mandates, and we are continuing to monitor its effects. On a related note, it was my pleasure on Friday, October 6th, to attend the swearing-in of our newest associate judge, Jeffrey Altman, who filled the vacancy left by the retirement of Judge Meyer. During that ceremony and the Pretrial Fairness Act implementation meeting, I was reminded of how fortunate we are to have a strong partnership with the 22nd Circuit Court. The Administrative Services Committee received an exciting update about the progress of the McHenry County Sheriff's Office training facilities in Cary. The new Regional Training Center will be hosting its first training event this Saturday, and the concrete floor has been poured on the new law enforcement shooting range, which we expect to be ready next spring. And finally, on Monday, October 2nd, the Chief Public Information Officer for the Illinois Emergency Management Agency, Kevin Sir, came here to give a presentation to our PIOs regarding emergency communications and to talk about future training opportunities. Our communications staff from County Administration, the DOT, the Health Department, Sheriff's Office, the EMA, and the State's Attorney's Office attended, and a lot of good information was shared. So thank you to the IEMA, County Administration staff, and the McHenry County EMA for putting this together. And that concludes my remarks for this morning. Do any members have comments this morning? Mr. Kaminsky.
Like to give a shout out to our Treasury Department. This week I received a call from a constituent saying, I got this check in for $200 in the mail from the treasurer. What's it about? And I gave her a call. The folks there, they know numbers. They're not going to give up until the balance sheet says everything is balanced. What it was is that his property tax bill was printed. The deductions that he should have received, came in late. They stayed and make sure that all the benefits that he was entitled to were posted and their numbers matched, and the balance he got back because he overpaid. So, shout out, job well done to our Treasury Department. They're awesome people. Thank you.
Ms. Van Hoff?
Yes, good morning. I'm just happy to report that I went in to see the members of the Merit Commission on my way in here this morning. And I got a hug from everyone and got a piece of dessert because we have a member that
Did you bring some for everyone?
Well, you know what? The person who does that, she brings a batch big enough for everyone. And when I was on the Merit Commission and still working in long-term care, she would bring a batch for the residents of Riverside Foundation. Nice. So she's amazing. I love this group. And one of the things I said when I was running for office is I wanted to bring that same spirit of working together that we had in the Merit Commission to the McHenry County Board. So we are working on that. Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Wagner?
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to the Transportation Department. I had a constituent reach out about some semi-trailers making a lot of noise using their air brakes, Jake brakes, I guess they're called, and it was disturbing a lot of the neighbors. So thank you guys for going out and checking it out and putting the signs up. They're very appreciative.
Okay, seeing no more member comment, we'll move on to public comment. Just a reminder, you'll have 3 minutes to address the board, at which time the red light will come on in front of me. If you haven't completed your comments, I would ask you to summarize so we can move forward in a timely manner. First up will be John Carson.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman and members of the board. I'm John Carson. I'm the managing partner of Trajectory Energy Partners. We are a Illinois-based community solar and utility scale developer. I'm here today on your agenda for your board meeting is Azurite Solar, an 18-acre, 2-megawatt community solar project that's on your consent agenda. We went through the ZBA for it back in July. This is the second project that we've brought to the McHenry County zoning process. You approved Plowshare Solar a few months ago. Earlier this week, we left some packets for each of you. Just wanted to highlight a couple quick things about this project. First, we are working with a local landowner, the Widener family, for this project. In fact, the closest neighbors to this project are all relatives of our landowner. I also wanted to highlight the extensive community outreach that we did around this project. In fact, at the ZBA, we actually proposed a change, a movement of where the panels are for our own project after working with some other neighbors, the Small family, and worked with them, local township officials, fire district, et cetera. There's a couple other issues that we discussed extensively at the ZBA hearing that we'd be happy to talk to any of you about. Issues around how solar fits into farmland and preservation of it. In this particular case, we worked with the landowner to place the project on the least productive part of their land outside on the west side that's sort of cut off by a riverine. I also wanted to briefly mention, as you vote on this project next week, with our Plowshare project that came through first, you put a 20-year expiration on the SUP. And I know this is an issue you're dealing with. In the past, you've done 10-year expirations. My ask would be that you not put this condition on as a right. We'd be happy to talk extensively with any of you about this. Short version is that these projects have a 40-year useful life. The quick analogy I would give for you is this. This summer, I bought a new truck. It's a Ford F-150 Lightning, all electric. It's out in the parking lot if any of you want to see it. When I bought it, I expected it to have at least 200,000 miles of range. Now imagine if the state of Illinois had said to me, well, not so sure about these electric vehicles yet, so we'll give you a license now, but at 100,000 miles, we might take it away. I would not have made that investment if I thought I would not get the full useful life out of it. I believe McHenry County has a very thorough solar ordinance. I think you have some very thoughtful components of it. And I would be happy to talk about any of these issues with you extensively, but our ask for this project and future projects we might bring would be to not place that condition. Thank you so much.
Next will be Lindsay Keisman.
Hello, my name is Lindsay Keisman, and I am the treasurer and a board member for the McHenry County Mental Health Board. I'm here today to represent the board and be available for any questions that you may have. And I'd like to follow up on a few things that were discussed at last week's county finance meeting. First, I'm very grateful to all of the board members who've shown up to our committee meetings, our board member meetings throughout the last year to learn more about what we do, our community members, and those who are impacted. We serve those struggling with mental health, substance use disorder, intellectual developmental disabilities, and their families, friends, and loved ones. As Board Member Kern said in the last meeting, there is no doubt that these things impact all of us in this room and the people that we love, and that we're all trying to do the very best for those in our community. I want to thank Board Member Sagar as well for expressing some desire to learn more about our programs, the hard facts about the needs in the community, and the data that supports what our dollars or any increase in dollars will do for the community. As a board member for the Mental Health Board, these things matter very much to me as well. Hearing about problems in the community and ensuring that value-based outcomes are happening is very important, and I heard that from you, and I know that that's something very important to every one of our board members as well. In fact, we have a staff that does quality assurance audits of every agency that we fund. We have a number of board members who are gifted in statistical analysis and have used that gift to look at the data that we have both in community needs, but then in the outcomes that we get from the dollars and the funded agencies that we provide. So I want to assure you that we are doing those things, and I'm always excited to talk numbers with anybody who's curious. So I appreciate the dialogue about that and very much understand that that's something that's important to all of you. We do want to welcome you to attend any of our meetings, and our recorded meetings are up there for view. We also are very pleased to have Carolyn Schofield as our new county board liaison. We have had some transition this year, and she's always available to answer any of your questions, as am I, our executive director, Leonetta Rizzi, or any of the board members. Finally, many of you mentioned that you felt right now was not the right time for a big increase, and many of you are concerned about taxpayers and the incredible financial pressure that they're under. In fact, there was discussion presented by one of the board members that you felt you needed one more year to look at the numbers, one more year to give taxpayers a break. Over the next year, I promise you, we'll bring you more information, anything that you need, anything that you want. And all that I can ask is that you do your very best to balance the needs that the whole community has, including the ones that we advocate for those struggling with mental health, substance use disorder, and developmental disabilities. Thank you so much for your time.
I have one question. I mean, is there a place where we can easily see the either recorded meetings or as they're live? I've looked on your website. I've been unable to find that, other than the Finance Committee meeting.
So those are on the government website as far as the open meetings. We also have, you're asking the recording specifically, not attending live? Yeah.
Well, I'd like to see them live as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so all of our meetings are listed on the calendar. We do have agendas similar to you that have to go out early, and then we have the call-in and dial-in options. We don't always have the video option available. We haven't had that technology in our building.
It would be nice to have.
Yeah, it would be nice to have. But as of right now, we do use the phone conferencing systems if people are not able to attend the meetings live.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Having no further public comment, we'll move on to agenda items. Do any members have items from next Tuesday's agenda they'd like to remove for discussion? Mr. Scala?
17A3 and 4 and 17B1.
Any others? Mr. Smith?
10A3.
Mr. Kunkel?
16B2.16 and 16B2.11.
Mr. Shorten?
16B.2.5.
Mr. Reinert?
Yeah, 16B215.
Seeing no others, Mr. Smith, 10A3.
Thank you. There was discussion on how we were going to handle the solar farms and whether we would be dealing with them before the state had their veto session. And I was wondering if there's any further discussion from any of the other members. And I apologize for not being up to speed with that exactly, but, or if we're going to put any other conditions on it as we were with the other ones. Is there? So I will have it for discussion at the meeting Tuesday night.
Okay. Ms. Greeno?
I had a question, something that I became aware of, and I do not know that it's happening in McHenry County, but I'd like to know, in that some cases, the companies that are coming in and putting the solar equipment on the farmland is actually using the value of the farmland as collateral to finance their project. Wanted to make sure that that's not the case in McHenry County. So that would be a good question to get an answer to.
From B&D standpoint, we wouldn't be aware of what was used for collateral on that side of it. It wouldn't be something that would come into our attention.
Well, and what I was learning about this is that in some cases, when the companies go bankrupt, then the landowners are finding out that they now have debt against their property that they're responsible for. So I'm not sure how that could happen, but it apparently has. And then the other question that I have is, why is solar going on ag land instead of industrial, like industrial complexes, roofs of factories? I mean, there's so much available space here for that, and it seems such an ideal use. Has anybody looked into that or built a case for that? Because the solar it is quite an eyesore on our beautiful county.
So from the P&D standpoint, the UDO, it's an allowed use via conditional use. So that was just one of the carve-outs that was made for agricultural land. It's also can be similarly applied for business or industrial uses, but those parcels are generally smaller. So for community solar, to fit those in there would be difficult, if not impossible. But that's just what's there and established now in terms of policy and the direction. We'll leave it to the county board to steer that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Shorten?
Just with regards to Member Smith's original comment or question as to how we're going to address these going forward, there's been discussion about possibly not having these on the agenda moving forward and just letting them pass through per state statute. But my personal opinion would be to have these on the agenda and how we vote on them, and any changes obviously would come before the board.
Noted. Ms. Meshes?
Thank you. So as I was against putting conditions on the last set of solar panel proposals, I would also be opposed to putting conditions on these. As I said, I think it was 2 months ago that we did this, that I said that two of them are redundant, and the lifespan, the 20-year conditional use, because has been shown to be a hardship to the financing. As for putting the solar panels onto farmland or replace farmland, I thought that in the ZBA meeting, an interesting point was brought up that, corn for ethanol is a large usage of farm fields, but the solar panels actually have a higher output of electricity that comes from it, or fuel miles. So I think I was interested in reading that portion of the ZBA hearing, and I think that it's an interesting way to look at how is our farmland being used, right? Are we using it efficiently? The other thing that was brought up again was in that ZBA meeting was the fact that the pollinators and the plants that are used around the solar panels actually end up enriching the soil so that the soil becomes a better quality soil for future farm use. So I'm not as concerned about using the solar panel, putting the solar farms onto this ag land as I had been in the past, with that new insight put into there. So thank you.
Mr. Kearns?
I think everyone pretty much knows where I've stood on the solar farms, including and I have supported solar farms in the past, and I still think we I support the amendments as we have in the past if we're going to vote on these. The other thing is you bring up on ag productive farmland, Ms. Meshes, you bring that up about corn. Our agriculture land is used for more than just that. Now, my major objection on this solar farm program has always been the state legislator and governor passing. It doesn't seem that from what I'm hearing, and I wish Ms. Althoff were here, maybe she could answer that for us, that the state legislator is going to do anything in the veto session. Seems to be no an agreement between them, the people down there that and the solar farm people not to touch it. And I think nothing's going to change with this for us. So if that's the case, our governor has also put forward that it should be put on parklands. Solar should be everywhere on parklands and every place else. Maybe our conservation district should start looking at the 26,000 acres and that they've taken out of production. As they take out of production, they have pollinators as a huge thing there that they've planted. We went out there for a tour and we walked across the fields of flowers. Are beautiful and everything else. I agree. And we shouldn't be hypocrites. If we're going to do that, we should open up our conservation land instead of taking out corn production and everything. And I understand that, and I don't know in fact, I haven't spoken with any of them, that they actually have turned down some significant contracts for solar farms. Somebody should look into that, how much money before they run another referendum to buy more land or whatever, that there's some significant dollars that they have been offered to put solar panels out there on those farms. And I want to see how many hypocrites we have in this room who would vote against or not support the conservation district putting solar farms out there. They support them on our ag land. I mean, I'm a no vote on all of them at this point with the state setting it up the way they are. But maybe we ought to start pushing it that the conservation districts start taking care of their buildings instead of letting them fall into disrepair, and that they could use those funds for those kind of things. And like I said, I understand they're going to put forward a bond in the future to buy more land and make more acquisitions. Well, I don't know if we should, as a county, approve something like that when they have this option that they could do. And people will tell you, just like at our past meeting, but we want it on all the ag land farms, but don't put it on this farm because, vote no on this one because it's a conservation easement and it ruins the land. Well, let's quit being hypocrites here. Let's vote yes or no on things to your beliefs. And the state statute's gonna pass everything, but it'll let everything go through regardless of what we vote. So, some respect, I think we ought to not even discuss solar farms anymore and just say we're done with them and let the ZBA do it. And I would agree with our Mr. Gottemoller about that why would we even discuss it anymore and waste our time here when the state has taken away all of our control? And it's not the right way to do things. So that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Ms. Ness?
First of all, I don't think that we can tell private citizens when the land is zoned properly what they can do with that land. Farmers sell good farmland to developers to put housing developments, and we don't talk about that. We don't prohibit them from doing that. Farmers receive lease money from solar farms, and we know they work hard. And so if this farmer has decided that this is the best use of non-productive farmland, who are we to tell him he can't do that? So that's the first thing. I do think it would be beneficial to explore other ways of using sites for solar farms, but that's a different conversation. Second, we have a law. It's just plain and simple. Whether I like it or not is irrelevant. We have a law. We have to follow the law. I agree with Member Kearns. I don't know why we continue to talk about this. Let's follow Member Gottmaller's recommendation and move along. Let's move on. So thank you.
Yeah, and actually, what I would prefer to get these meetings moving along is that we discuss the merits of the agenda item itself instead of debating the topic of whether the state should or should not impose this on us. And I think we've had most of these discussions already, and going forward, I would ask that you take that into account in your comments. Mr. Sager?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I, too, will support the request that is on the table by the petitioners, and I will do so without conditions. I think that puts us contrary to what the state law is right now, and I'm not willing to do that, and that's consistent with my previous votes on items of similar nature. So I will continue to do that, and I will also support colleague Gottemaller's suggestion that we need to reconsider our approach to this. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further comments on this one. Mr. Shorten, 16B25.
Yeah, sorry, my screen just went dark. 16B25 is the resolution to allocate $100,000 additional from the McHenry County Housing Authority, McHenry County Emergency Utility and Rental Assistance Program. I just had a couple of questions on that. Would that be Scott or? Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. How are you?
Good. So the Housing Authority is winding down its role.
Yes.
Explain that to me. Is the money going away or they're just?
They returned the funds, so they had $357,000 left over. We've done a reconciliation throughout the spring and completed that reconciliation with them. That entailed ensuring that the checks cleared the bank. In some cases, landlords held on to checks for some time before they cashed them. So once all of that went through, they're out of that program now. They are no longer completing that program.
Okay, so that, what was it, 16 million? Is that dollars that are gonna go away, or it's not gonna be sit elsewhere?
So what's remaining is the second allocation, so between the two, ERA one and ERA two is a total of 16.4 million. ERA one is complete, that was the 9.123 million, that's all spent and completely gone. The remaining funds that we have are from ERA two, and we have those until like 2026. So those funds could be used for rental assistance ongoing. And then there's a portion of 1.8 million the county board approved to be used toward affordable housing development.
Okay. All right, that's all I had.
There, thank you.
Okay, next, Mr. Kunkel, 16B211.
I had to look to see what this was again. Yeah, I had a couple of these that kind of are similarly located. I think it behooves us, because we're already talking about in 2 years when our ARPA funds run out, it behooves us to scrutinize some of these things closely when we're using the last of these ARPA funds to decide, or at least contemplate, how we would fund these in the future once the ARPA funds are done. I really didn't have anything more than that on this.
Okay, Mr. Reinert, 16B215.
Yes, thank you. I just had a question about this. It said bottled water, and it said also the rental for the dispensers. I just assume this is just a typical 5-gallon bottle waters and dispensers around the buildings. Anybody? Okay, we're not just buying pallets of bottled water.
No, absolutely not. They're done on order.
Right, and we're renting the dispensers, and this is for the, okay, I just wanted a clarification. It was just a simple question. Thank you.
No, sure.
Mr. Reinert, 16B216.
That was, I didn't do, I just.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was Mr. Kunkel.
And it was 16B215 as far as I have here. It's again, it's ARPA funds. This is for the storage of the PPE.
Maybe.
Is that not correct? Am I
Oh,
doing?
yeah,
do I have that
Nelson
right?
Road project, yeah.
16B 2.15.
Okay.
The ARPA
Scott.
funds modification.
Yeah, that is correct. That is the storage of our PPE that right now we're storing in Lake County. Once that lease is up, actually, we're building out the archives facility then to be the long-term solution for this COVID-related PPE that we are required to keep.
Right, I'm pretty good with all that. The thing is, and I'm actually pretty good with the door. An overhead door can enhance the storage facility for sure. I think that's a net gain for taxpayers even in the future. What I'm still a little fuzzy on, and again, it's ARPA dollars. But a lot of this stuff, some of this stuff has already gone defunct as far as past its prime user date. I realize we have to keep it, I understand all that. But can't this stuff be inventoried, shrink wrapped, palletized, and stacked up rather than spend another $51,000 on racking and it's beyond that, because I mean, the whole project, we're talking about $190,000 more on top of the money we had to shift and move from, on top of the temporary storage that it is now for product that we are obligated to, but have no use for. I think we're taking an inordinate amount of care and putting a lot of dollars towards something that we probably don't need.
We're not going to understand that some of the expired PPE we have in what I'm going to call cold storage at DOT. So if it's expired, obviously we can't use it, so we're not going to take as care. And if we have other places to put it, we certainly can do so. But space is limited within the county, and that's a challenge that we've had for a long time. But look at it this way. The improvements to the archive facility are right now for this PPE-related challenge. When that resolves, and we hope it resolves someday. I can't give you any solution on when it happens. But these are improvements that will be with the archive building, you know, for a long time. So we're gonna need storage space, we're gonna need racking, we're gonna need this. So these improvements will have greater benefit as, you know, as time goes on for the county.
And I understand that. It'd be great if that was worded that way, because I'm all for an enhancement, a net gain for the taxpayer. But to say this is just for PPE, that kind of sticks in my craw.
Well, I understand, but it also makes the connection to the ARPA funding.
I understand it. Thank you.
Melissa, you had something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that some of, or a great deal of the supplies that we have are on pallets. And so the redesign is going to allow for future receipt of PPE supplies that come in on pallets, and we can just move them in to the new space. And we can then utilize, if we had to, you know, hand out the PPE, it's going to be redesigned to make that more efficient.
Okay, Mr. Scala, 17A3.
Can we do A3 and 4 together?
Sure.
Okay. So the Finance Committee met last week. I appreciate the fact that there was 14 of the 18 county board members present as part of the discussion. I don't need to go over all of that discussion, but in short, the recommendation that passed out of Finance was to take the recommendation that was at our Committee of the Whole meeting that was presented with the addition of $270,000, sorry, that was going to be used to pay for mental health boards, one-time costs for software and door locks that would be coming out of ARPA interest. So that was the only change that was made, and I'm just presenting that as to what was to come before the county board here.
Okay, and just as a reminder, because I have been asked a couple of times, this is up for 30-day review. We will not be voting on this at Tuesday's meeting. Mr. Scala, Mr. Kearns.
I have only one question on that, and the 270,000, I'm still a little bit confused where that would be voted on.
So what do you mean by that?
Your committee voted to use $270,000 of ARPA interest to change the locks as a
Software,
one-time
yeah,
deal.
correct, yes.
Is that part of our budget presentation or a supplement that will be voted on, or how does that work?
No, so in this particular case, 17A3, the levy request will remain exactly the same because it didn't adjust the levies at all. 17A4, which is the appropriations, that is where that would be adjusted in the appropriations ordinance in order to have the interest dollars pay for those items for the mental health board.
And so I guess my question is, I don't understand, and I should, but I don't. So forgive me on this, but I don't understand that 275,000 or 70,000, if we vote for the regular ordinance, it's automatically in there. It's not in there as a line item that you just added in as a committee? I don't understand that.
Okay, so you're talking about procedurally what happens?
Procedurally.
Okay.
How do we as a board have any say on that? Because I've had people ask me about the mental health board. I've supported the increase. But the 275,000 is basically just for this year, kind of a shell game, because now they can use 275,000 not to do locks, but to put it towards services. And I know other members that have spoken to me are against that. And I'm not saying whether I am or not, but where procedurally do they have any say on that?
Okay, so procedurally, when it comes to the actual use of the funds, that is controlled by the county versus them when it comes to the use of that particular funds for the appropriations of the locks. It was locks and computer, correct? Carrie? I just want to be,
2 servers.
Security, the door lock project?
yes. So what happens is because that money is earmarked for those projects, that's where it'll go and that's how it will be spent. So there won't be the autonomy to be able to spend that or give that to, whatever outside services are being asked for. So, and to answer your second part of that question, if the board decided that didn't want to do that, then that would be a change to 17A4, which is the actual appropriation side, not the levy side. And no different than how the committee added it in, it would just be taken back out again. Am I answering your question, or?
Somebody would have to show me and a couple of the other members who are interested in that, how that actually in numbers, how we would do that, if that's the case, or how they would do that. So could you show after the meeting or something, could you show me that? You and Pete, or?
Carrie would be,
So how that works, I guess, by line item, it's actually 4 entries to the budget. So it would be an operating transfer out of ARPA and a utilization of fund balance for ARPA. And then it would be an
But
operating
it's the
transfer.
ARPA interest, isn't it? It's not.
It's in the ARPA
Correct.
fund though, but we separate it out within that fund.
Okay.
And then for mental health, it would show up as an operating transfer in, and then an increase to their capital. So to answer your question about if it could be used for client services, so capital goes into an object level for capital 60, and per the budget policy, it can only be spent and it can't be moved around without a resolution.
A resolution on the county board or a resolution on the mental health board?
The county board.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Ms. Greeno?
So my understanding on 17.83 is that these final numbers are taken from the new growth and then the CPI, which combined are the levy, correct? Correct? Okay, just want to make sure. It's a lot.
It's last year's levy plus new growth plus CPI.
Correct,
That's what
correct, yes, okay. Okay, so what does that mean, a portion
A
of
portion of
CPI?
the allowable CPI, which
Oh, true,
allowable
true.
would be 5%.
Yes, yes, okay, I understand. So CPI was 7%, the PTEL caps it at 5%, and we're looking at 1.95%. So there was a lot of discussion about the percentage, and so this breaks down the levy without actually identifying the levy, as far as what the total percentage increase would be on the property taxes. And then the appropriations of that money is in the 17A4. So when we're voting on Tuesday night, if this is going to be.
We're not voting Tuesday night.
We're going to have it presented for.
It's up for review, 30-day review, and then the following month we'll vote on it.
Okay, so that's fine. But we wouldn't want to post something for 30 days and then vote it down and after it's been posted for 30 days. So we'd really want to have it the way we want it to be posted, correct?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, okay. So, if we wanted to make any modifications, are we making modifications to the 17.8.3? Or are we making modifications to the appropriations in it today?
So it depends on what you're trying to achieve. They are directly correlate with each other. If you're adjusting levies, then you have to do 17A3, which will then impact 17A4. If you're not adjusting levies and you're only adjusting dollar amounts within the budget, then it would only be A4.
Okay, so if you said, okay, we have issues with the budget and appropriations, so we wanted to take those in, so then we just have to back those out and then see what the impact would be on the lower than 5% CPI level levy. So for example, if you're going to take $1 million, then you'd back it in, it wouldn't be 1.95 anymore, it would be a lower percentage on that amount. So I just want to make sure because, you know, we're looking at it in different frameworks. And I just want to make sure that everybody on the board feels comfortable with how we're approaching it so that we can make decisions and not, I mean, some people could just sit here and be confused and then not be able to make a good decision. So am I correct that if you looked at the appropriations and you said, okay, I disagree with this money being sent here, so I would like to have that pulled out of appropriation so then we could lower the CPI portion or maybe the new growth portion, something, but we could lower the total levy amount?
So yes, you could if a majority of the board members wanted to adjust the levy up or down from what is being proposed, that can be done. You would specifically have to say where that money is coming from, out of which levy, and then subsequently you would have to talk about the appropriations, where that money would either be taken from or added to, depending on what you did with the levy.
Okay, and does that happen today or Tuesday night?
Well, if there was a discussion, I would hope it would happen today, because that's the point of the committee of the whole.
Okay, so we're having that discussion now, so, good.
Mr. Smith?
Yeah, thank you. Regarding the 270,000, I guess it seems to me it'd be clearer and more transparent if that was a separate resolution, as opposed to where it's at. I mean, I don't care, but there seems to be some concern from the other board members, and
I don't know how you do that as a supplemental when you're approving a whole budget.
okay.
Well, it wasn't added as a supplemental. It was a motion by the committee to take the money from ARPA interest and put it into the capital project fund for mental health board.
But we've taken in ARPA interest money before as a resolution and used it for other projects, and this seems like it's a singletary project that we're using it for, so it could be a separate resolution.
Well, because those are outside of a budget. So once the budget has been approved, then it takes board action in order to modify that. So that's why what you're talking about occurs throughout the year, not just with ARPA interest, but with anything. Mm-hmm. So this is actually now part of the budget versus outside of the budget cycle.
Okay.
Ms. Wegner?
Thank you. As Member Scala said that he wanted to talk about this today instead of November, and I will not be here Tuesday night. I will be out of town, so I wanted to be a part of the conversation. There's been criticism about the emotional pleas during the mental health board discussion when they asked for an increase. But the fact is, these are emotional and personal issues. This is not a clinical resolution where we're buying a truck or buying some software. This is something that affects real people and the residents. So I want you to think about those who are addicted and homeless. I spoke with somebody yesterday who works with this community. And if somebody is addicted, or let me just rephrase that, if they're homeless, most likely they're addicted. And they cannot conquer that addiction until they have security and a stable place to live. So the cycle usually goes, they're addicted, they're homeless, they end up in jail. They get out of jail, and then the cycle continues. And then, let's say they've been in jail, they're on probation. If they're homeless, they probably don't have transportation to get them to their probation hearings or their drug testing. So that's a cycle. And adding money to these agencies to help this is one of the only ways that we can help people break this cycle. And unless you're personally involved with somebody like this who's been affected, it's hard to put yourself in those shoes. So I want all of us to think about if we've ever wanted to change, make a healthy change, like be on a diet. If we're stressed and we have a lot of other issues going on, it is not the best time for us to make a healthy change and stick to it. You cannot keep that habit if you have other things going on. So think about if you're addicted to a substance. You don't have the stability to make that change. I've heard that throwing money at the mental health providers isn't going to do anything. Well, that's false. Because one of the main things that we need in this county is to attract and retain the talent. We need social workers. We need people to help those who are coming to these agencies. And the turnover in these agencies is high because they don't get paid very much. So what happens is they'll go work for these agencies and then they end up turning to the private sector because they need to afford a house and groceries and everything else. So putting money into these agencies will help them. Lindsay talked about value-based outcomes, and thank you for talking about that. I know we probably have not received all the information we want to, but I do want to assure you that money is not just thrown at these agencies. Just like when we give ARPA grants or senior service grants, they have auditors who go through all of their grants to make sure that those agencies are performing the way they said they would perform with value-based outcomes. So when we get to the money, the tax levy going to the mental health board, we all know has not increased, which means it hasn't kept up with inflation. This year, the mental health board looked at the need and decided that they were going to be brave enough to ask for what they needed. Actually, not what they need, what our community needs. And they're getting vilified for wanting to help those less fortunate in our community. I agree that it hasn't been a perfect ask, that there's been back and forth with their board, talking about a $600,000, a split vote on how much to ask. But I do think the mental health board will correct all of this in the future. And what we have to remember is it's not for them. It is not for them. It is for the people in our community who have intellectual disabilities, behavior disabilities, developmental disabilities, and addiction, and those who can't afford insurance. So I do want to say in closing, I support the $270,000. They deserve to have secure locks just like we do and at our county to keep them safe. But also it's been mentioned tonight about only being able to hear their meetings. Well, they can't afford the audio-visual equipment, especially the new ones that we just purchased ourselves because they don't have the funding. So if we want to view their meetings, I think that's another thing we should think of at some point. Maybe they'll ask for that request. But I just wanted to tell you today, since I won't be here Tuesday, that I do not think $525,000 is enough. And I will be asking for more. Thank you.
In regards to being able to broadcast their meetings, I've been in the conference room at Dakota Street on Zoom meetings before. It's as simple as having a PC and a webcam. I think that that's a pretty low bar for transparency for us to be allowed to see what's actually going on at times. So that's all I have to say on that. Mr. Hendricks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I would be asking that the levy remain true flat, but I wanted to bring it up for discussion now, to see if there's even an appetite for that. True flat, no growth, no new growth, with the budget being reflected. True flat with no new growth, with the budget, that was, or the budget that was presented, at last month's meeting, by the county as one of the scenarios. I'd ask the board to consider that. I'm looking at I was looking at some of the line items, and I'm looking at 2021 actuals, county expended 191.5 million. Looking at 2022 actuals, county expended 205 million. It looks like 2023 actuals through the end of September are around 169 million, and then if you annualize it, which I just gave it a 20% increase to account for the rest of the fiscal year, we're right on pace for about the same as 2022 actuals of 205 million, 202 to 205 million, and yet we're budgeting for 246.5 million. I don't believe that an increase is needed or necessary at this time. And we would, especially in light of the motor fuels tax increasing revenues by 3 million. I don't think tacking on a couple million extra more through the levy is appropriate at this point. Maybe it's a future need, but I don't think it's a current need, so.
Mr. Reiner?
Yeah, I kind of thought we were gonna at least see the different options. And I'm sorry for my confusion, but, you know, the 1.95%, it just seems to me to be a little disingenuous because we had a little over 3% with the motor fuel tax. So we've raised the taxes on the county a little bit more than 1.95%. But also, is there a way we could share the information with the whole board on what it would look like if we just did the new growth and no CPI? Eric likes just a 0-0. I just was wondering if we could discuss what it would look like, this ordinance, with just the new growth and no CPI. Is that possible that we could do that today and maybe just see if we would have a palette for something like that so we could get it over with today rather than, you know, waiting 30 days and then not approving or approving it?
That was handed out to you, Mr. Reiner.
Yeah, I know it, but today is the day to discuss it, or to say if the county board as a whole would go for the 1.95% or just the new growth. The board, the finance committee voted on it, but as a whole board, I was just wondering if the whole board would want to discuss this or not.
Well, so I guess you had a handout that had that information, so I don't know that. So
I don't know that everybody on the board had it.
Well, it was handed out at the committee of the whole, so everyone should have it.
This is a committee of the whole. Yeah.
Well, that was, yeah. It was, so it was handed out then at the committee of the whole, and it was also handed out at finance, which I know you were at also.
Right, thanks, Mike, and I appreciate that. And I know there were some of us there that wanted to discuss that option, and we did, and you were great. The finance committee was fantastic at it. I just didn't know that the 1.95 was the appetite for the whole board, and I just was wondering if would we want to discuss that option of just the new growth and no CPI? That's my question.
Well, and I'll reiterate what I said at finance. You know, I'm trying to find a situation where we have 10 people that will vote for a budget. And I think we have individuals that would like less than what has been recommended by finance, and we have those that want more than what was recommended by finance. And so my concern is that we don't have 10 votes that would be willing to support the finance recommendation. Because if you have a certain amount that want less and you have a certain amount that want more, is there enough people in the middle that are willing to accept finance recommendation? So I believe, based on the information that I heard at finance, that there is a minority that want less and there's a minority that want more. But those two minorities put together may be enough to not pass anything. And that is a concern of mine.
Fair concern, and I would agree with you, Mr. Scala. And I would go with the 1.95% if I knew, right, all of us did agree on that. And it was voted on at finance, but at what point does the 18 and possible 19th vote for the tie decide that?
Well, it's an ordinance, so that's not it has to have 10. Well, it is. That's when we vote, but. So John, I'm willing to listen to what you're recommending. I think the whole board is willing to listen to what you're recommending, but the problem is we need a recommendation that we can then discuss.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. And I was just wondering if we could discuss if we took just the new growth and no CPI, what it would look like. And am I way off base? I mean, do we have 10 votes for the 1.95%? And I'm there for it. I don't want to start any unnecessary meetings but I just want to make sure that this is, as a whole, this is what our body wants. I don't know how to do that. Do we just take just a straw counters? You know, how do you do that?
I don't think we're in a position to do that at this time. I mean, I think that, as Mr. Scala said, all the board members should have that information, of what that looks like if it was to be zero. I don't know how else we can articulate or show that other than what you already have in your hands.
Yeah. Quite the conundrum. Thank you.
Mr. Kunkel?
Thank you. I agree with Eric. I'm looking for a flat budget because I also agree with Kelly that there is need out there. The only thing is, for this board, need has to be quantified through numbers or something, not just our emotional plea. I made an emotional plea because I work with the taxpayers of this county every day, hard-working people. The wholesale inflation went up another 0.5%. That affects the people who work for it directly. So that's an emotional plea. And 0.5% is also a number, statistical number. I believe we can see that this county will operate, roll up its sleeves and operate and meet all of its needs and all of its mandates at flat, 0. I believe we can give what we can to mental health, and they can give us the numbers that we need to see to quantify the need that they have. I can tell you directly, you can quantify that need with the taxpayers. We can show in this budget, the county administration has showed us how these numbers work down the line to 0, as John was asking, to 00, as I'm asking. This is doable for a year and allows mental health board to get their ducks in a row and get us some real numbers, how they're effectively operating theirs. And at the same time, we're not starving them out. They're still getting money, and I would still be looking at that ARPA interest percentage rate. If we could take some of the ARPA interest, again, don't want to keep falling on the ARPA sword, that is maybe an infusion for some of the true base needs, like door locks that they need. I think we can do that. But we have to. At our own peril, we ignore the taxpayers of this county. We are at a tipping point. We must give them a break from the inflation that arguably our government created. That year gives everyone who comes to this board an opportunity to present to us in statistical analysis and numbers, as Dr. Sager had asked for before from the board, who said, I believe at that finance meeting, that we were going to see these numbers by the cow. I realize that's a lot of work, but a year's time, they can definitely get these numbers together, and then we can look at this hard. Maybe this is a sales tax thing. But right now, to quantify this just based on purely emotion, I can't do it. I'm at a 0-0 for the levy.
Ms. Ness?
Thank you. I think everybody pretty much knows where I stand on this. I will not support a budget without a significant increase for mental health services. I don't know how other members haven't seen data, but I have seen data because I asked for it, and so I got it. I want to remind us that the people who use these services are also taxpayers. They pay taxes, they own homes, they work in this community, and they have this emerging and ongoing crisis in their lives. And maybe they don't make $25 an hour. Maybe they work in the service industry. Maybe they work less than the FTE that qualifies them for health care in their companies because they need this health care and they can't get it. They're underinsured or uninsured, and that is their priority target. What's not in this budget, when you look at actual numbers, is the unintended impacts of untreated mental illness, which is days missed at work, school missed in school, people not being able to pay their bills because now their housing expenses have far exceeded 30% and they're on the edge. Then this clinical issue enters and it makes things harder. We don't account for that in the cost of mental illness, untreated or undertreated mental illness. And it's not just substance abuse. Children with school anxiety, children who can't get psychiatric care in this county and who are bused out of this county to residential care in other states, where family care treatment occurs on Zoom because families can't miss work to go see their kids. It's a complex and complicated issue. And we're elected to think about it all, not just the taxpayers who pay high property taxes. Everybody. That includes people who are without resources and people with resources. I have said this before, and I actually do think my colleagues think I make it up. I have never in my district been asked about property taxes. In all the canvassing I've done, they talk about housing, health care, mental health care, transportation, how are we going to get road repair? I have never had that question come up. So I think it is on us, whether you have the data in front of you or not, to really consider it. That the Mental Health Board has tightened its belt for years. There's nowhere to tighten. So that, and I'm not going to say it again because I've said it enough, and so I won't repeat myself even in future meetings. Because if we're not convinced of the value and importance of funding these services, nothing I say will make a difference, and I know that. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity.
Mr. Sager?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to address the procedural aspect of this. I am incredibly impressed and pleased with the degree of passion and dedication which members of this board, as well as the staff, and frankly, all of those service agencies and organizations in our county that are trying to wrestle with all of the needs and the interests of a broad constituency. The people that we serve, frankly, the people that provide the resources that we are discussing for distribution today. So I do appreciate that very much. I also want to say, from a procedural perspective, that we have done a good job, in my mind, of presenting the budget options, to take a look at what those budget options are. We had a special committee of the whole on the 28th of last month where we had a wonderful presentation, and we all agreed that it was a great presentation by staff and Chairman Scala with regards to the finance budget options that existed, and we left that meeting feeling well-informed. Then we had a very hearty discussion in Finance Committee, and although I did not particularly think that this is the way that I would have done it, it's okay. The chairman not only allowed discussion completely and fully by the committee itself, but by other board members, and there was a large majority of board members at that meeting to address their interests as we looked at the budget, and certainly a major part of that discussion had to do with the mental health appropriation. And so I think that it's been a wonderful process. It's my understanding that today we are here to identify where we stand, because this is where we derive, or we hope to derive, some degree of consensus and resolution, so that when we come to that board meeting to have the review next Tuesday and then present that for public comment and come back and make a decision the following month, that we are prepared to make a decision with not a lot of angst, that we have come to a conclusion and a resolution. That's what elected bodies are supposed to do, because frankly, these are complex issues, and we don't expect the individuals within the community to have to make these decisions. We are elected to make those decisions, and so we have to have a thorough review of them. Part of the process today is to come to resolution. Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, I would request that we do have some straw poll here today so that we know where we are headed. Again, I believe that's the purpose of today's discussion, and I think that we need to find out how many individuals prefer to have a flat situation, no new growth, and no increase in the CIP. Those who believe that the recommendation that was before us now from the Finance Committee as well for the new growth plus a 1.95 CIP is appropriate, or how many individuals believe that we need to be taking new growth plus an increased CIP percent. Simply to find out where we stand. It could be, I believe, frankly, that we'll walk out of here saying the majority believe in a new growth plus 1.95%. But let's find out. So that's my request, respectfully, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Ms. Van Hoff?
Yes, thank you. We've spent a lot of time talking about this, and we've had several members from mental health and other professionals from the community come and give us data to show that we are not leaders in mental health in McHenry County. We have had data that show that our suicide ideation has increased, and that we are higher than the national average in McHenry County. We can be leaders in a lot of other areas, and we are, but we're not leaders in this area, and we should think about that. So one of the things that was discussed at our last meeting, I distinctly remember Member Scala saying, if you want to discuss this in more length, come to the Finance Committee. And I understand that 14 board members showed up at that meeting. So that was the place where we were supposed to discuss this. We've seen all this data. We've seen the financials, what's going to happen if we do new growth and CPI and 1.9% increase in that. We've seen all that data. We've had spreadsheets given to us. We've talked about this numerous amount of times. We know that there's a need for an increase in the budget in mental health. We know that. They've been running flat for several years. And, you know, I'm just curious. We increased the motor fuel tax to the full 8 cents. I live in Crystal Lake. How many of you have seen the roundabout there? Why do we need a roundabout on Congress Parkway? Doesn't that come from the transportation budget? Does anybody, can anybody, where does it come from? Somebody shaking their
It's
head.
not a county road.
Oh, okay. We've got roundabouts all over though, and wow. I'm sorry. Well, the point is that we thought we needed more money in transportation, and we increased to the full 8 cents. So we can see the need in our broken roads. We can see the need for repair there and in the vehicles that need to be repaired. So it just appears that we are putting the roads and the vehicles above our humans, our citizens, our people that need the care. So I would not support a no increase, or I think, again, the Mental Health Board told us what they really needed. So we should be considering giving them as much as they can, and again, to reiterate what Member Wegener said, it's not giving it to the Mental Health Board. It's giving it to the people in the county who need it. Thank you.
Ms. Meshes?
Thank you. So at Finance, and I did very much appreciate the whole process that was undertaken by Chair Scala and the efforts put in by Mr. Hartman in filling our answers, putting on our thoughts on the board. I did vote initially against the levy ordinance, but that was because when I looked at the board, that said where people stood on what they wanted, that I didn't know if we were going to get to that 10. And I thought maybe we needed more discussion at Finance, although it was already a long meeting, about where people were going to go. In some cases, I was surprised because I thought some people might be more flexible in giving more towards the levy, and they were not. And in my estimation, this the levy ordinance that we have before us is probably the most generous we're going to see from this board. I think that there are a number of people who are willing to go lower. I think there's more people willing to go lower than there are willing to go higher. And although I fully recognize the strong need in the Mental Health Board's increased funding, I think we need to be mindful of what we feel the levy can handle. When we look at the different scenarios that were given to us a couple weeks ago, if we're looking at no growth or no a true flat levy, or just taking new growth, we see reductions in what we would allocate for mental health. We also see reductions in what we would allocate for Senior Service Grant Commission, and we also see reductions in what we're going to put towards the corporate fund. And so the question then that I'm not sure is if we aren't going to go with the ordinance as offered today, what supplementals or what cuts in corporate are we going to end up seeing? Like previous years, it was real clear, if we don't do this, this is what's not going to get funded, and that's not clear. So Ms. Weiss, do you know what is on the table when it comes to cutting the corporate portion of our levy?
So on the recommended, the 1.95 for the CPI, the amount that we're sending to corporate funds the supplemental requests. Mm-hmm. So I guess the decision would be, are we going to fund those recurring expenses with fund balance or not do them?
So we're looking, so there's some, later on we would decide, so let's, from the purpose of my discussion, let's say that we're gonna leave the 525 alone with Mental Health Board and instead cut from the corporate fund. What happens then? Where you're saying we would then use fund balance to fund the supplementals, or we would cut some of the supplementals or some of these programs?
Yes, we could do a combination of both, but the ones that we have for the 700,000 in the recommendation, those are the recurring supplementals that we typically try not to fund with fund balance. So we could either move forward and use fund balance, or we could fund some of them, or none of them.
But to be clear, though, that it's going to be a decision of the board. You know, we're going to look to your direction on what you want to move forward with and what you want to omit. What's presented before you is a recommended budget. Finance and Audit Committee had recommended that.
Right.
That's being brought before you. But for those decisions, obviously, we're going to look to the county board for that guidance.
So, I mean, I guess that's part of the problem is that the only thing I've heard that people are willing to cut is the mental health board funding, which there are a number of people on this board who absolutely are not willing to cut that funding, that they want more instead, right? And so, although I voted no at finance for this, I would vote yes for it in November. Or I will vote yes for it in November. It'll be clear in what I'm gonna do. And it's partly because I think that is the most thoughtful approach that we can take. When we're saying we're gonna cut the levy or make the levy flat, we're not saying what is it that we think we're gonna pull the money from, right? And that's the problem. I see keep it flat or don't take the 1.95, but it's still not saying what is it that you think we're gonna cut from the budget. So I am in support of the budget as it is being proposed. And I do hope that we make some progress today in making sure that that's where we're going in November.
Mr. Gottemoller.
Yes, there's two parts of this. I think the first thing that people have to realize is that if, you know, you take either side of this, if you want to lower it to flat or if you want to raise it, I think realistically what you've just done is possibly made it impossible to pass any budget. I am in favor of it as it's been presented by the Finance Committee, and I will stay with that position. What I would add to this is, and I think the long-term question for us as a board is, can we get a referendum on the March meeting to decide whether or not we're going to continue to fund mental health as property taxes or put it under a sales tax? If in fact the citizens of McHenry County want to make that change, it would mean a reduction in property taxes of approximately $10 million a year from our budget. And it would overall give them an increase. And it would also help the fact that anybody who comes through town and buys something here can also help pay for our mental health. Instead of it just being the property owners of McHenry County, it would be anybody who's spending something in our stores. And I think it's a fairer way to do it. It would give them an increase in their budget and you know, that they've been asking for, in fact, more than the increase that they asked for. And at the same time, it would take it would give property tax relief to the rest of the citizens of McHenry County. So that would be my position. I would stay with the budget as it's been presented, and I would take steps to make certain that we have the opportunity for the citizens to weigh in it in March.
Thank you. And I have asked what a 0.25% sales tax would generate, and it looks like it's approximately $14 million. Ms. Greeno?
Thank you, Chairman Bueller. So I have to precede the comments that I was going to make. It distresses me to hear the hard work of the Mental Health Board defamed with some of the comments that were just made. McHenry County spends more per capita than any other county in the state of Illinois, 4 times more than the next closest county. To state that our suicide rate, based on percentages, is so extremely high is to play with statistics, and I hate seeing that. I love statistics and to manipulate emotions with that. So we're talking about an increase from in the high 20s to the mid 40s, and that's 72%. I would also like to point out that we've had a 66% reduction in teen suicide because of going from 3 to 1. So that aside, when we increase property taxes, we take the assets of the taxpayers of McHenry County. And to support that, looking at the last 20 years, Home valuations in the states of Idaho and Montana have increased by 177%. Texas and Florida, 113%. Kentucky and Indiana, 33%. Illinois, 13%. Meanwhile, in the last 20 years, property taxes in Illinois have increased by 127%. We're doing this in a year where we are going into a continually worsening recession with homeowners who have mortgages at 1% to 2% interest, which are going to have to be refinanced, with projected interest rates going as high as 23%, reminding us of what happened in the late 90s, and then also the crash of 2008. So we do need this year to work through things. The Mental Health Board has no problems making capital expenditures. They say their issue is programmatic expenditures, so that's a choice that their board makes. And so I would also be no new growth and 0 CPI increase.
Mr. Hendricks?
Yeah, I do think, it was my understanding that today was the day that we were hoping to get a consensus, so I do think it makes sense to have to see where everybody's at. I agree with Mr. Soccer. Look at that. But
Look at that.
But I do think we should have some sort of consensus, if the goal is to have this upcoming board meeting run smoothly and avoid reiterating all the debate that we're having right now, because we're trying to figure it out on Tuesday instead of now. And just to be clear, I would be fine with, I'd be fine with a budget cut. The 0-0, I think the county could do pretty easily, to be honest with you. We increased the Department of Transportation's funding by $3 million through the motor fuels tax. I mean, we could even theoretically reduce their budget or the budget elsewhere for expenditures by $1 million and still have a $2 million overall increase to spend wherever. I'm flexible. I'm very flexible as to where the funding's allocated, but I don't think a tax increase is needed at this time, where 2022 actuals, revenues to expenditures were roughly 9 million higher in revenues than what we expended. 2021 actuals were roughly 7.5 million higher in revenues than actual. The actuals were 205 million for 2022 actuals. 2023 it appears on pace to be at that same 205 million in expenditures, but we're talking about a $246 million budget, which is actually, almost $20 million reduction from our 2023 budget, which the 2023 year went relatively smoothly. I'm not opposed to using ARPA funds to fund the equipment needs of the Department of Transportation. They have an additional, as of now, anticipated $3 million increase to their budget. I just don't see the need, and I do think it would be a good idea to figure out where everybody's at.
Mr. Reinert?
Yeah, I want to be clear too. I do not want to hold this budget hostage come November. I'll vote yes at the 195. It would just be a lot easier knowing that we do have a consensus that 10 people would support the 1.95, because at the finance meeting, the finance committee did vote for this, but I'm just not sure if there was a consensus of all the 14 people, and I just would be much more comfortable knowing, 0-0, new growth, 0 CPI, or the 1.9%, with the CPI and the new growth. I do not want to make this an adversarial thing. I just want to make sure that we agree with it. Come November, I am not going to hold this budget hostage. We need to, as a whole, agree on this, and I hope that we could do that. I'm a little disheartened that people are leaving this meeting, because I think this is the most important part of this, is now we could at least take a straw poll and see if we do have a consensus, but it is what it is. And I don't want to disparage the finance meeting. I thought Mr. Scala ran a great meeting. We all had a great open conversation. Thanks.
Okay, seeing no further comment, I've been keeping track of the comments as we're going here today. I appreciate the recommendations to have a straw poll. We've got a few board members that aren't here, and some of my individual discussions with certain board members is that they're undecided at this point. I don't think by a straw poll that we can get consensus today, but what I've got so far is a dead heat with a few undecideds. So what's a straw poll going to accomplish? I think that there should be some further conversation, maybe what somebody's point of accepting or not accepting the budget that's been presented to us. So that's where I stand on that. Mr. Kadamaler.
I agree with you, and if you've been keeping track of numbers, which I do forever, I agree it's a dead heat. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to 17B1, Mr. Scala.
Yeah, I would ask, and I don't know Adam, are you the one that was working on this? Okay, so the only thing I would ask is if we could have a red line version. So I know that in the upfront, it talked about changes, but the document itself is not redlined.
That's correct. We provided the red line last month to go and review. We provide a clean copy for this month. I can certainly get everybody a red line copy.
Okay, no, I'll just go back a month. I apologize.
No
so
worries.
I'm a little derelict. I'm reading now versus a month later, so I apologize.
That's okay. No, I understand.
I'll go back a month, not a problem.
Yeah. If anyone else would like a red line copy to have as a supplement, just let me know.
Mr. Hartman, you got a report for us today for Mr. Austin?
Yes, I do, and I'm going to move over to his seat, so please appreciate if you indulge me. Pete is out for the rest of the week on some much anticipated, and hopefully he's going to enjoy some time off. So he asked me to fill in, so thank you very much for this opportunity. First off, the emergence of AI into business and to our lives is pretty much talk of the town. You hear a lot about it, and it only behooves the county that we start looking at its implications to county operations. So our owner, Alicia Schuler, is leading a work group of 14 different departments and representatives thereof to look at how AI could affect the county as it becomes a mainstay into how we do business. They're going to look at opportunities for efficiency, opportunities to maybe redo some of what we do, but they're also going to look at some serious considerations and cautions that come with AI. So we appreciate her leadership and the representation from our departments to look at that and see what that will be as we move into the future. Secondly, we are working on adding a web page to the county site that is going to showcase our initiatives and efforts as it relates to alternative energies and to our green measures. Right now, we really don't have a place for that, and we've done a lot of work over the past 15 years, and I'll even point to the roof here with our solar panels that were put in 2009 with the American Rescue dollars. So McHenry County has a long tradition of engaging in just energy efficient measures, and we want to showcase that. We want to put that out there for everybody to see. We have several reports that will be coming online to talk about our carbon footprint and looking at EV analysis. And we want to make those documents available too on this webpage, so it will be a clearinghouse for some of our studies. And as we move forward with considerations and initiatives for alternative energy or for green measures, we want to capture that on this webpage too. So really just to be more transparent about what we've done and what we're doing. So we're very excited to work on that. It's in progress. I can't give you a deadline right now, but hopefully everybody will appreciate what we're doing. As you're aware, McHenry County has purchased the Bank of America property at Algonquin and Randall Road. as it sits there. With the help of our purchasing team, we went out with I think it's called an RFII, is that correct? Basically a request for brokerage services. And we had one response come in that Pete and I will be meeting with hopefully next week to talk to them about how, about some recommendations on this property and how we can best market it. Some more to come, but just to let you know, we are looking at taking the next step with that property because the long-term solution is not to hold on to it and to dispose of it through the market. So that's moving forward. And just as a final note, if you've seen the gathering invite, please mark your calendars for October 18th. Starting at 2 o'clock, there's going to be a celebration of Valley High's Civil Award from the American Healthcare Services. And, there's a big accomplishment and a celebration of our Valley High team's efforts there. And then we're going to celebrate the groundbreaking, which has already occurred for the memory care unit. So we look forward to seeing you there, and hopefully we get a better day than today. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Scala makes the motion. Ms. Greeno seconds. All in favor, say aye.